Welcome our audience, welcome our viewers, welcome our most important people, the owners of the game. We are here again on our third episode, and it's a very important episode for us because this is the time that we are actually giving you an update on what is happening in Zimbabwe. You know, Zimbabwe, very soon they'll be going for their elections to elect the Zimbabwe Football Association board, and everyone globally is excited. People, they want to know what's happening, who is coming, who will be the president of the Zimbabwe Football Association. So today we are so privileged that we are having our first guest, one of the candidates who is actually participating in the Zimbabwe election. So we are so excited that today we have our first guest, Mr. Gore. Mr. Gore, welcome to the Soccer Training Club, where we talk about nothing else but the most beautiful game, soccer. Welcome, Mr. Gore.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting me today.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Gore, look, we will jump into the issues of today, but the first thing is we want to know, people of Zimbabwe and people globally, they want to know, who is Marshall Gore?
Well, Marshall Gore is a football enthusiast, former player, and now administrator. I was born in Zimbabwe, in Glenora precisely. Went to school at Ruveneko Primary School, and then proceeded to finish my primary school at Nettleton Primary School in Braeside, where I captained my school team. And then proceeded to Cranbourne Boys High, where I did my high school and briefly played for the school team under 16. Finished school, my O-levels 1991, and then proceeded to go and play football for One Commando Football Club, which was in Division 2 at that time. I was coached by Jerry Chidao, if you remember him, former Rhinos legend. Whilst I was at One Commando, I also rubbed shoulders with the likes of Jairus Tapera, who's now coaching Manica Diamonds, and met a lot of other players there, Timothy Chirozani, and a lot more other players. I then left One Commando and went to Goromons to start a social enterprise project. And there I resuscitated our village team, and later on collaborated with other people, and we started the Goromons Area Zone, of which I was a member of the executive. The Goromons Area Zone flourished a lot in the early 90s and went on to be amalgamated by other leagues to form the Mashonaland East Division 4. And I was a commit member in that Division 4 also, whilst I was playing at the same time. Got involved locally in Goromons in grassroots football development. I was appointed, I think in 1996, I was appointed chairman of the Independence Committee. We were organizing our independence there, raising funds, running the independence tournament at provincial level, which included about 48 teams. We used to stream them down up to the last 16 teams at the independence celebration. I enjoyed my success in Zimbabwe, foot playing and also administration-wise. Came into the UK in 1998 and continued playing semi-professional football for several teams, and later formed Team Zimbabwe UK, became an administrator, and here I am now ready to contest in the ZIFA elections.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. Actually, as a follow-up question, you are talking about something very exciting to me, actually. Yeah, I hear you talking about Division 4, Division 3, Division 2, and also you moving to UK. What comparisons can you draw between the soccer structure in Zimbabwe and the soccer structure in the UK? Any takeaways, in terms of comparison? Is the system the same? The Zimbabwean system, is it the same as the one in the UK?
No, not at all. The two cannot be compared. But what I can say, which we had in Zimbabwe, is probably a lot of talent, abundant talent we had in Zimbabwe, which was so natural. We had a lot of talent, but the systems were very different. Here, even at semi-professional level, when I was at Hendon at semi-professional level, we had a fitness trainer The setup was immaculate. The training pitches were absolutely fantastic, and the investment in grassroots football here in the UK is immense and huge, which is difficult to compare with Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, there's a lot of potential, but I think the systems are different. We have neglected investment in grassroots football, and we have also neglected investment in coaches. I think comparing the two, one thing which I saw lacked a lot in Zimbabwe is the level of coaching. The way I was coached in Zimbabwe as a semi-pro and the way I was coached here was totally different, because remember at one commander, I was playing in the second league from the top tier, but I came here and I was playing in the conference, which is the bottom tier. But the level of coaching was just amazing. And I would say, actually, our Premier League teams in Zimbabwe would struggle in the conference league, which is the bottom tier here. That's actually the gap is huge, really.
Okay, but in terms of relegation and promotion, the standards in terms of resources and maybe the administration part may be different. But in terms of the issue of relegation and promotion, is it the same structure? Is it the same system?
It's the same system, you can say, but I think the English system is it's the same system when you look at it. We now got Northern region, Eastern region, Southern region, and I think we get teams from each region to get promoted, Right. But in the UK, it's more difficult because the Conference League it's got feeders from the National League, the different sort of like regional leagues, but they all play a lot of playoffs to get only 2 teams to come through. So in the UK system, at the bottom tier, only 2 teams go forward until when you get to the championship. That's where you get 3 teams. Now, quite recently, it changed actually to get 3 teams to come into the Premier League. So the competition is very stiff. It's very tough here. And in Zimbabwe, I think you can recall now, I'm not sure if we have Division 3 league now. I think we only have D2, 2A, 2B, and Division 1 at the moment. So again, that's again another area where we need to streamline our football so that we have a proper pathway which enables teams to develop their muscle from an administrative point of view. Because when teams get fast-tracked to come into the Premier League when they are not ready, you have a lot of challenges also.
Talking about the tier system, in Zimbabwe, we don't have the tier system. And you are mentioning that in the UK, you have the tier system. Don't you think that the tier system can sometimes cause some confusion?
I don't think so. If it's administered well and there's transparency in the way it's managed, I think it's okay. I think if people are clear in terms of the number of teams that will be promoted and how things will move, I think it works well in that regard. But I think it is only when things change, some elements of surprise, and then again, the different leagues needs to be also regulated. Here we have what they call county FAs, which are sort of like, I think the county FAs are sort of like equivalent to our regional ZIFA associations, like Northern Region, Eastern Region. Here we have the county FAs, but the county FAs are so organized as well, and you tend to find that they also work so hard to support their teams to get into the National League because it helps their local community and their talent pathways. So I think it's straightforward, a bit tough, but straightforward.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gore. Then we go into, when I was looking at your manifesto, you were talking about one of your objectives is to promote sustainability. You want the Premier League clubs to be self-sustaining. Given the situation we have economically in Zimbabwe, how do you intend to arrive at this, or how do we intend actually to help PSA clubs to be self-sustaining?
I think I draw inspiration from myself, actually, personally, when I was working in Zimbabwe, when we had our team which was playing in the Goromonzi area zone, which later became the Division 4. We had a social enterprise model where the workers were actually working for the team. we registered our team into becoming a social enterprise, which our team was a company. So we were creative. During the week, we had several projects that we were doing in the community, that were commercialized, that supported the school. At one point, we were actually employed as a local team to fence our local school. We got that contract, bid that contract. We got the money into our coffers. We were doing tendering works in farms, and that's the money we used to buy a car for our team. That's the money we use to support our team to travel and go to games. So I believe we need to be innovative in our mind. I know the economic landscape in Zimbabwe is a bit challenging, but I also know that there's a lot of money in Zimbabwe that if we are able to channel those strong businessmen financially into investing into football, they can make their clubs viable. I think we are seeing currently the rise of Simba Bora, and currently also the rise of Scotland Football Club and Moors in the first division. It's an example where the people can also tap into community Mongols and bring them into football. We have seen it a lot here in Europe, where their big business people buy football clubs, they're lowered into investing in football clubs. That has led to sustainability. But most importantly, I think we need to also educate people how to run football clubs. Football clubs are a business. They are not social clubs. They're a business, especially if they're professional. So I think we also need to invest in training our administrators how to run a football club efficiently and effectively from a financial point of view.
But also, I would want to say, from your own point of view, in terms of government support, do you think government is really supporting the sports industry? Because, like, for example, I'll give you an example that almost for the past 30 years, PSL mostly, because I'm also a former general secretary of the Zimbabwe Premier Soccer League, you find that we've been trying to convince government that they should not charge a PSL club 6% levy. Actually, it's called the SRC levy. They charge it on gross, to the extent that you find that those small teams, every time they host a game, they take the 6% levy, they then deduct the other expenses. At the end of the day, you find that they record a net loss, but government would have taken their 6%. From your own point of view, and also if you check now with the ZIFA, you are actually coming up to be the ZIFA president. You find that the government does not give ZIFA money for development. They only give ZIFA money, say, for example, the national team wants to go and fulfill an international fixture. This is where government come in. So I'm bringing in two issues. There is the issue of the levy that is levied on Premier League clubs on gross. There is the issue of government only coming in to support the national team on what I would call an ad hoc basis. So really, from your own point of view, do you think that government is supporting the sports industry enough? And when you are coming in as the new president, how are you likely to change policies? Because as far as I'm concerned, government policy on sport, I can almost say it's not there. What is your take on that?
Thank you. That's a very important question, which you have brought. I think, firstly, we need to look at things from a broader perspective. You're right to say government is not really supporting sport in the country. And I think this is not about our government alone. This is a tendency, again, in most sub-Saharan African countries. It's only in the north, when I've traveled in the likes of Egypt and Algeria, where you see strong government policies in developing infrastructure. And sport there has also generated a lot of money for the country. So I think there is need for collaboration with government to unlock the value that is in football, and also to explain to government, to enable them to understand that if they support growth in the sector of football, then they can create employment. There are a lot of incentives that will come if we broaden and expand and allow the game itself to breathe. You're right that there would be negotiations to ensure that some of those taxes are lowered, if not removed, for the benefit of football. But also we must urge our clubs also and our PSL to be also competent in terms of doing their business so that they lower and attract government confidence in requesting. Another example, I'll tell you that I actually think now we have a deficit in sports equipment in Zimbabwe. So I'll be engaging government as well to actually lower or remove taxes on importation of all sports equipment to come into the country. You have to bring those incentives. And you are right that it will be very important to engage the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Sports, and actually ZIMRA themselves as well, to look at some of these laws, and the local authorities have to come into the equation. You are definitely right that we need to look at a broader perspective, how we can bring back the change that is required by making the necessary adjustments. And I'm sure this is an area that I'll be paying a lot of attention to.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. We're going to take a short break. Our viewers, don't go away. We're just taking a short break. And then when we come back, we are going to deal with two main issues. The other one I want to hear, but I'm sure you are aware so much that there's an issue of facilities in Zimbabwe, infrastructure. You know very well that Zimbabwe today is actually playing their international games away from home. We want to talk about that. And then we also want to talk about sponsorship. So we take a short break, Mr. Gore, and then we come back. Thank you. Welcome, viewers. Welcome to our second part of this third episode, where we've got a special guest. Our guest is Mr. Gore. Mr. Gore is one of the ZIFA president candidates for Zimbabwe Football Association. We are so excited to have you, Mr. Gore. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ken.
Mr. Gore, one of the most important issues in sport is sponsorship. I can also say from my experience with the Premier Soccer League, you'll find that our long-term, I think even today, he's still the sponsor of PSL, I think the Castle Lager, Nut Bro, that's a beer sponsor. But I can tell you, just giving you my experience, is that the sponsorship is not very much. I'm not trying to say they're not doing much. Castle Lager is the maybe the oldest sponsor that we've had, but I would want you to know that in between Castle Lager, they came in Econet. Econet, I think they sponsored the PSL for about a year, and then there was some contractual problems that took place, which I also want maybe you to briefly come in, and I want to hear your experience and your view, especially in the UK. You'll find that the other problem that we have on sponsorship is that what we call exclusion clauses. Sometimes you sign a contract with a sponsor, and then they give you a clause which says you cannot engage in any other contracts of their competitors. I don't know if you are aware that the contract between Econet and the PSL that time, it fell off because they had this clause, and apparently then Caps United had a contract with Net1. So when Econet discovered that there is a contract with one of the PSL affiliates or members with a competitor, then it became a very big issue, and eventually there was a bit of politics that came into play, and Econet withdrew their sponsorship. I wanted to hear from you, from experience in the UK, these exclusion clauses, are they there? Do you experience them? Or can the competitors actually come in and sponsor together? I just wanted maybe you to give us your view and your experience in the UK.
No, thank you, Kennedy. That's also another important issue of sponsorship. I think maybe before I talk about the contractual aspects, I'll just maybe speak about the broader aspects of how we can attract sponsorship to the game. Personally, I think sponsorship is required in Zimbabwe football. We have a deficit of sponsors in the sport, largely by the fact that maybe there's been a lot of lack of good governance and poor administration, but we don't want to dwell on that. I think the approach we need is the multi sponsorship approach. In the UK, you tend to find that the Premier League has got multi sponsors in every sector. If it's a bank, it's Barclays. They go on telemobile and everywhere. So, but in Zimbabwe, I think there is always a tendency to go for the big companies on alone, But I think we should have packages that will lower also even the small SMEs to also come and sponsor, even if their sponsorship is worth 100 or 200 US dollars a month, but they appear on their banner. There are certain areas where they can also be featured. So I actually think we need to be broad-minded and open up in terms of how we strategize in terms of looking for sponsors. And we must target the big sectors as well, where money is being made. It's no doubt that you companies that are most likely to spend are companies that are most likely to have a turnaround. And where do you find them? You find a lot of these companies on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. We have a lot of big mining conglomerates. So you need to engage them, bring them, sell the incentive of the league, sell the incentive of your clubs. And also, I'll be advocating for in more of a Saudi Arabia approach, where the Football Association and the government are working on a model of supporting their own clubs. So this is where we need also government assistance to ensure that those companies that are investing in football are also afforded tax rebates, so that there is an incentive, so that there'll be a rush to get companies to invest in football because there are tax rebates that are being offered. So these are bigger issues that I'll be engaging government, engaging ZIMRA to address these issues. Now let's go back to the issue you mentioned, which I'm very conversant of, the issue of Caps United. I think the issue was Caps United got sponsorship from Net1, and Econet was sponsoring the Premier League, and the Premier League would not allow Caps United to play with a Net1 sponsor on their shirt. So that's where the issues started, and Net1, their sponsorship package with Caps United made it clear that they did not want the Econet logo on their shirt, but Econet was sponsoring the league, and therefore that was the fallout. I think maybe what we need to do, Kennedy, yourself as a former administrator, we also need to invest a lot in educating our clubs to run themselves very professionally and to get an understanding of contractual lawyers as well. And I think it's important. We have had a lot of contractual disputes even here in the UK as well. There are gray areas, and sometimes people get overzealous when they're being offered sponsorship. They do not consult their legal teams. I'm assuming that maybe only the big clubs have legal representatives. But it's important for any professional club, a club that is playing in the PSL, to have at least a legal advisor who will scrutinize these things to avoid the mishap that happened where Caps United had to go and engage Net1, but at the same time, the league was sponsored by Econet, and therefore we had an impasse, and eventually the sponsorship was lost. So I think it's also the duty of the Premier League to educate its clubs about the fundamentals in terms of observing the obligations of the title sponsors. You have title sponsors, like, for example, now you have title sponsors, which is Net Procasto, which is the title sponsor. I think it's about also the league educating the clubs about the requirements from the sponsor. And again, also asking the title sponsors to also have some form of flexibility to allow the clubs to have other sponsors to come in and sustain them. I think there's need to discuss these things in football forums, or eventually even putting up a football conference and having yourself to come as a speaker as well and share your experience from Canada. That is much needed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gore. I know that's very true, because this issue about sponsorship deals, it's really, it can be something huge. But you see, just also to communicate with you, I remember just before I left PSL, I visited the PSL South Africa, actually on a familiarization tour. And I can tell you that I remember I watched a game between SuperSport and I think it was between Super Sport. I can't remember the other team, but what I know, it was South Africa Top 8 tournament sponsored by South African Airways. And the Super Sport was actually being sponsored as a club, was being sponsored by British Airways. But I can tell you, you would see that British Airways adverts on the touchline and the South African Airways adverts on the touchline. And you know, like, I mean, these are rivals, these are competitors, but they can actually, you know, like
coexist.
Coexist. The other one is sponsoring the league, and the other one is sponsoring the club. So I agree with you that education is very, very important. Otherwise, sometimes it's either the clubs that loses or the league itself. But anyway, thank you very much for that point. Then I come back to this issue about infrastructure, Mr. Gore. You know that our national team and even our clubs that are playing in the African Safari, they are actually playing their home games, home away from home. But if I can tell you that one of the main issues is about the bucket seat system. And I will tell you the bucket seat system story started whilst I was still also with PSL. I left PSL 2003. So we are saying, as a country, as a nation, Zimbabwe, we have failed to implement the bucket seat system from as long back as 20 years ago. You are coming in as a ZIFA president or aspiring to be the ZIFA president. What do you think should be done actually in the short term and in the long term in terms of infrastructure for our soccer in Zimbabwe?
Infrastructure is a huge challenge. And I want to concur as well that it's an area where I have already started to look at options of how we can support the development or upgrading of our football infrastructure. I think, first of all, you are right to say we are in a precarious position. We are one of the 25 African countries that cannot play their qualifiers at home because of lack of stadiums that are cleared by both CAF and FIFA. I think I would like to admit that we have a lot of work on our hands. And I go back to where you said that this work cannot be resolved by the Football Association alone without the support of government. We need to engage government. We need to engage also the local authority. They host most of the stadiums. We need to sit down. In my view, I think the plan that works is we need to have a proper feasibility studies of the deficit in sports infrastructure that we have. So we need to bring in a company with expertise of looking at what exactly do we require? What are our requirements? What can be achieved in the next 5 years? And after, when we do that, then we engage with government. What concessions can we get to government to support with underwriting the financing of some of this infrastructure? But again, all this needs to be put in a business case that showcase also to government that when you develop sports infrastructure, for example, I'll tell you that the National Sports Stadium itself, it's underutilized. I've had a tour of the current National Sports Stadium. There's a lot of space there. The National Sports Stadium you could put clinics and physio clinics there that could operate and generate money. There's a lot of office space there. It's underutilized again, So we need to bring in the acumen. I was in Uganda recently when I finished watched the AFCON qualifier between Uganda and Congo Brazzaville. After the match, I was told by the officials that we are not going home. There is a function inside the stadium. Inside the stadium, there's a reception room that can host 3,000 people, a VIP reception. So all the top business people, the who is to who of Uganda, came into that function. The players were there taking pictures. The FA were strengthening their brand, and it was costing about $20 US for an ordinary ticket and $50 US for a VIP ticket. But I want to tell you that it was packed. There was a celebration party in the stadium. This is innovation, that these stadiums are not just created for football. You can host conferences in there. You can do a lot of other things. So I think we need to embed a commercial and viable projects alongside the stadium. Because sometimes I think government, if it's just what we need stadiums, they're just thinking that they're investing and it's a waste of money to invest in these stadiums. But no, these stadiums can be turned into functional projects that work actually. In the UK, if you try and book a football stadium, I think 2 days ago, I went to Wembley Stadium to attend the Spanish football conference in Wembley Stadium. There's so many functions there. So I actually think that we need to sit down and come up with models that work, investment models in force infrastructure, and look at how the PP partnerships can be arranged.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gore. Then I come to my last question here. I understand the last or just endorsed the ZIFA constitution has a requirement that for one to contest as the president of the National Association, you need to have been in Zimbabwe for 2 years. And I know you're based in the UK. Are you eligible to contest for this election?
Very much so. I am. I am on the basis that although I've lived in the UK, I think the last 5 years I've been spending a lot more time in Zimbabwe. Okay, I've been in and out of the country. It's not a secret. I've been in and out of the country. And most of my travels have been to engage other partners to support the development of the game. So I haven't been out because I'm choosing to be out, but it's either I was out to go and mobilize resources, attending courses, edifying myself so that I can be prepared for the job that I want to attain. So it would be a travesty to justice if I'm disqualified for those simple reasons. I'm a Zimbabwe passport holder. I'm a resident in Zimbabwe. I've got a house in Zimbabwe. I pay my taxes in Zimbabwe. So I cannot see any reason I can be disqualified from standing in the election just by the mere fact that I left the country to go and attend to business and also to go and visit family. The other time I was in Zambia, I actually took my father for medical treatment in Zambia. So when you look at that, one has to stay in the country for 2 continuous years as a prerogative in order to apply for the job, I don't think that is right.
Okay, but in terms of within the last 5 years, if you add up your days that you have been staying in Zimbabwe, do they add up to 2 years?
Without a doubt, they will. But again, it shouldn't be a case of that. What does that add to the qualities of one becoming a football administrator? Your longevity in staying in a country. What does that give you? We're living in a global world now where even yesterday I watched the whole game of Scotland and Herentals under 21 in the first division on my internet when I was in my office. So what is it that will exclude one from not being in the country? I don't leave the country for selfish reasons. I leave the country for valid reasons to edify myself and for business purposes. So, and also, if we bring an argument to say who out of the candidates has not left the country in the last 2 years, you find that none, perhaps, all of the candidates have been traveling for different various reasons. So I see this clause as discriminatory and heinous with a hideous agenda to specifically target other people. And that shouldn't be the case. And even you, Kennedy, you're in Canada right now. When you saw a desire that you want to come back and serve Zimbabwe, why should we put a restriction on you that you should have been home for a certain amount of years or certain amount of hours or weeks? What is that to help you as an administrator? I actually think that is very backward, and it will be contested, not only by me, but by many other people.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Gore. We wish you the best, and we definitely hope that you will qualify and will, like I mentioned to you outside this edition, is that I'm going to invite you again. Once your nomination papers have gone through, we are going to invite you for the second time, sometime in January, just before the election, and then we'll see how far you'd have gone, and if there's anything new, maybe you'd have concluded in certain deals. Just waiting, like to say, I'm just ready to come in as the ZIFA president. But for now, thank you very much to our loved viewers. Thank you for following us. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and also let's support our candidates. Let's give them the moral support they deserve, especially every Zimbabwean out there. Let's give our candidates the moral support, and we wish you the best. Mr. Gore, thank you very much, and it's bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Thank you, Kennedy, for having me on the program, and it's good to speak with a fellow administrator as well.